Fellow workers and citizens of Zimbabwe, I address you today on this significant occasion, the Workers' Day, the International Workers' Day, when workers worldwide celebrate and commemorate the value of labor. It is unfortunate that we are unable to gather in our numbers owing to COVID-19 restrictions. We are, however, appreciative that in the small gatherings allowed around the country as the SG has given, I think we've got 25 places that people are gathered around the country. We are hopeful that with this decentralization of our commemoration to districts, we are able to cascade our message of unity and hope. This May Day's message from the ZCTU is a message of unity and hope. Unity in the sense that Zimbabwe is a polarized country. It is not polarized natural, but people who want to hoodwink workers, people who want to hoodwink citizens to believe that Zimbabwe is poor whilst they are looting and milking the resources of this country. They've deliberately made this country polarized. It was not as polarized as it is now when people were fighting for freedom. They may have different parties then. They might have had different unions then, but they had one thing that was uniting them. It was the unity towards the struggle for self-rule. It was a unity towards the struggle for emancipation of the indigenous people of this country. Is there no cause for us to unite as workers of Zimbabwe? I don't want to say much about why we must be united as the working class of Zimbabwe, because you know that despite the propaganda that is churned out daily by government, despite the motivational speakers that are pushed to us by business and capital, trying to tell us that we are poor because we are lazy, trying to tell us and lie to us that we are poor because we don't think, those who want to convince us that we are poor because we have not ventured into entrepreneurship, despite that, we know that we are united in our common misery. Shinga mshandi shinga, penga mshandi penga. Zimbabwe ndo yega nyika ine greeting kana kuti language yaramba kudzingwa, vamwe vakambouya nana bolato munhu wese kuzonangobvunzwa zvakamira sei, zviri sei, zvakaoma yaramba kubva pamuromo wevashandi. Patsvagwa mamwe magafa mulocation, vatsvaga mawedzi angabvisa zvakaoma. Kubvunza murume mukuru zviri sei, zvakaoma. Mwana mudiki zviri sei, zvakaoma. Amai zviri sei, zvakaoma. So we are united in our misery. We are united in our bondage as working class. So today we want to bring a message of unity to the working people, working men and women of this country. We are bringing a message of hope to the working people of Zimbabwe. We know things are terrible, SG. We've said that workers are under bondage. They are suffering. Every one of us understands and know that we are in bondage. I think at this moment we just have to thank God. We just have to thank God in Zimbabwe. Matambudziko amewana ekuZimbabwe akaoma zvokuti ukapotswa nerimwe unosangana nerimwe chete. Ukati waitirwa zvakanaka, une majinzi akanaka, haurwari. Unorwara nekushaya mari, school fees yevana yakudiwa. Ukapotswa nenyaya yekushaya mari ye-school fees, ukarwarirwa naamai ukasvika papari, iwo ndiwo unenge wakurwara, amai votoita mutambo. Iko zvino unonzwa 2,400 US dollar kuti munhu apinde mu-ICU. Pane munhu ari kutambira 9 US dollars as a domestic worker. A domestic worker is earning 9 US dollars. How many years, SG, how many years, comrades, does a domestic worker need to save without spending a cent for them to be able to get critical medical care, which is costing 2,400 for a decent ICU place? For someone to get an ambulance, you need 190 US dollars. if you are suspected to have COVID, how much does a person who is earning $25, which is the minimum wage, that the government, with all the PhDs, people with PhDs in cabinet, people who have stayed in America, people who have stayed in good countries like UK or South Africa, they find it fit to give and to regulate and promulgate, to come up with a law, a statutory instrument that says a worker in this country must earn 2,500 as the minimum wage. How many months does that person has to save without spending anything for them to get an ambulance if they are in critical condition? So ukatadza kubatwa naizvozvo, hurumende yacho yakakumirira futi kuti ukangokomplaina kuti nzara iripo chikuru, ukakomplaina kuti tiri kutadza kutambira mari inokwana ngoma. Saka muZimbabwe tinofanira kutenda Mwari, ini ndiri kuti tofanira kutenda Mwari, nokuti kuti tinzwisise kuti tiri kungozvifambisa sei, tasvika sei patiri pano, inyasha chete dzaMwari dzatinadzo. So faced with the bleak political and socio-economic environment, workers need this unity. We desperately need this unity. We also need this hope. So we are bringing the message of hope, that don't despair. Some people were telling us, I was reading an article that was telling us that it has been too long in the struggle. So shingamshanda ichaiti. But remember these comrades, Zimbabwe was not free at some point. It became independent in 1980. But when did the struggle started? When did the white men came? Not our own director. When did the white oppressive and racist person came in this country? So from 1890, people were in struggle. In the article there was irony because the person was talking about Joshua Nkomo, the person was talking about Benjamin Burobo, but they were saying trade unionists must now get out of the struggle. But how was this country won? Joshua Nkomo fought a bitter liberation struggle, an armed struggle for us to get this country. Don't despair, comrades. South Africa did not come easy. It was tough under apartheid. It was tough under Botha. But they continued to fight. It was the working men and women of South Africa who fought for constitutional democracy in South Africa. So let us take that as our inspiration, that no matter what time it may take, our generation is going to contribute to the struggle. Our generation is not going to abdicate our responsibility to free ourselves and to free our kids and to free future generations that are coming. So we bring this message of hope to workers of Zimbabwe and citizens of Zimbabwe, that it may be done, but definitely tomorrow the morning is coming and we will be happy someday. This year's Workers' Day commemorations are particularly special to the ZCTU, in that your organization is celebrating 40 years anniversary. We are in our 40th anniversary and would be holding its 9th elective congress this year. As espoused by our theme, ZCTU at 40, fighting for political, economic and social justice in this country, our work is clearly cut out. The theme aptly sums up workers' challenges and points to the undelivered areas and shortcomings of the past 40 years. The ZCTU has built a brand around fighting for political, economic and social justice and shall continue in that direction regardless of man-made or natural challenges that we face. There are some people who are telling us today that labor should move away from politics. I'm surprised because some of the people who are churning out that propaganda, they were educated by trade unionists. They got into politics through the education of trade unions. There was no ZANU-PF in 1940. There was no ZAPU in 1927. But in 1948, people were striking in Bulawayo. Joshua Nkomo was leading workers. In the 40s, Benjamin Burobo was leading workers. It was the trade unionists who formed the nationalist parties, and no one in ZANU-PF can tell us to do away with politics. I'm surprised that at some point this propaganda is also confusing some of us. In some of us who were very conscious, who were political conscious, who were class conscious, are getting carried away with this message of the latter day saints. Shinga mshandi shinga. How can we get out from politics when Mtulinguwe is determining what you eat today? How can we get out from politics when Mtulinguwe is determining which particular barrel you are supposed to buy? He was not to say, my barrel again. It is politics that is determining what you eat. It is politics that is determining where your kid goes to school. It is politics that determines what you wear. It is politics that determines whether you will die a tenant or you get somewhere to stay. Shinga mshandi shinga. So the ZCTU wants to affirm, SG, that we are going to continue to fight for political freedom. We are going to continue to fight for political justice. Our theme aptly points out that the ZCTU has been fighting for economic justice. You are aware takabva kuhondo kuine nyaya yegutsa ruzhinji. You are aware takabva muna 1980 kusvika muna 1985-86 kuine nyaya yegore rebudiriro. Gore rimwe nerimwe kwakune gore redzidzo, gore rimwe kwakune gore reutano, nerimwe nguva kwakune gore remaguta. Asipo zvino kwane gore rekurohwa kwevanhu. Shinga shandi shinga. ZCTU is going to continue to fight for economic justice. Makamunzwa Philip Changu achitaura achiti kana usina kujoina ZANU-PF hauite mari munyika inei. Munozviziva kuti kana mbeu yemaguta yatinenge tabhadhara isusu tax yedu sevashandi vemunyika ino, when it reaches the rural area, your mother is not given, your mother is discriminated and segregated because their son is an MGC member, because their daughter is a ZCTU cadre, because their son was once seen at a function of a trade union. So there is social discrimination in this country. The ZCTU has been fighting that, and we want to reaffirm that we will continue to fight for political justice, we will continue to fight for economic justice and for social justice. The theme therefore calls us to reflect and look back at how we fought against a brutal regime of Robert Mugabe. Despite the brutality and ruthlessness of the state, the workers under the ZCTU led a struggle for civic and political rights as well as demand for socio-economic rights. We never gave in to the dictator. As we are under a more entrenched and even more ruthless dictator, the theme calls us to learn from our past and draw our inspiration from those who fought for the days that we are now losing daily. On this, we need to go back as far as prior independence era. We must draw lessons from Benjamin Burombo. We need to draw lessons from Joshua Nkomo. We need to draw lessons from Asochandlo and many others who fought for the independence of this country. It started in the workplace. It is going to end in the workplace. No one is going to tell us that is in Zanaka. Makamuzwa mtumungu asiti zvakarongeka. Hazisi kuzorongeka kucabinet, hazisi kurongeka kuparliament, hazisi kurongeka kusenate, hazisi kurongeka in their ivory towers. It is going to be seen at the workplace. It is the workers of this country that are going to declare and tell everyone that things are all right now in this country. No one else. Shinga mshandi shinga. Penga mshandi penga. If we lack their selflessness or maybe their courage, what we must not lose is their class consciousness. They were under a ruthless colonial regime, but as trade unionists they resisted every racial, exploitative and dictatorial policy of the state. They also understood that unless workers and the majority of the citizens attain civic and political freedom, workers will never be prosperous. That clarity of thought and political consciousness must never elude us. Unless we get political freedom, unless we get back our civic rights, unless we get back our political rights, workers are going to continue to wallow in poverty. So that class consciousness must never elude us. Let no one shake us from this firm foundation that we've been sitting on for the past 40 years. There's no new wisdom. There's no new wisdom that can shake us from that belief which liberated this country. There's no new wisdom that can shake us from that firm foundation which saw the ZCTU fighting for progressive Labor Act and fighting for progressive constitution. That class consciousness must never elude us, comrades. We must also learn from Morgan Tsvangirai, Gibson Sibanda, Gertrude Mutombe, and many others, our heroes, our heroines, our veterans, how they endured the brutality and fought for freedom, equality, and justice. During their time, they resisted the one-party state agenda. You heard the deputy spokesperson or deputy communications director of ZANU-PF, Mgwada, saying that our agenda is a one-party state agenda. Morgan Tsvangirai and Gibson Sibanda rejected and resisted a one-party state agenda not because they were politicians. They resisted it in the late 80s when they were still in the trade union movement. They understood that a one-party state agenda is dangerous for everyone, for all of us. They are not workers. They are not going to be workers who are going to be prosperous in this country under a one-party state agenda. Penga mshandi penga. Shinga mshandi shinga. They demanded and eventually got a progressive constitution. It was Morgan Tsvangirai, Gibson Sibanda, and many others, together with others, who mobilized for the formation of the National Constitutional Assembly. They were fighting for no one else but the working class. They understood the power of a progressive constitution. They understood the power and the benefit to the working class of separation of powers in the state. They understood why judges must be independent from the executive. So they fought for a constitution which in our view is quite progressive. What is you and me, our own generation, going to do is that constitution is now mutilated before it is even being aligned to the laws of this country. Our laws have not yet been aligned to the new constitution. It is now being butchered. The Joshua Nkomo and Benjamin Burombo will stand out proud and say during our time, all the armory of the state was against us. The brutal colonial regime was facing us with vigilance and brutality. But we organized workers at every place. We conscientized and gave political education to every worker, every corner, every workplace. We stood up and shook the mighty power of the colonial state. We didn't stop there. When they were churning out propaganda that workers should concentrate on bread and butter, we understood that bread and butter can be disturbed by the politician decisions. We understood that when we got our bread and butter, the politicians can come and steal our butter, and then we're only left with bread. They will stand up tall and proud and say, we formed nationalist political parties and waged a beat-up liberation struggle and brought independence to you. What are we going to say when we stand up together with Joshua Nkomo, when we stand up together with Asotan of Comrade GS? What are we going to say? When we allow people to mutilate a constitution that is only 7 or 8 years old, what are you going to say? When you greet the people who sit in parliament to mutilate a constitution that gives you labor rights, a constitution that gives you political rights, a constitution that ensures that the ideology of the working class does not taint the operation of the judiciary. You saw it when the judiciary is captured and compromised. Comrades, we saw it in 2015 during the Zua judgment. When the judiciary becomes activists of business and the ruling elites, they churn out judgments that you never think will come out in an independent state. Judgments that you never thought could exist even in a colonial or apartheid state. They bring back everything that people fought for and died for in Nyazonya and Gorogoza and Chimoyo. They bring it back, the Master and Servant Act, because the judiciary is captured and it's compromised. It can only be captured if we allow them to mutilate the constitution that Morgan Tsvangirai fought for. So what are you going to say when Gibson Sibanda and Gertrude Mtombe and Morgan Tsvangirai ask you, comrades, why did you allow this to happen? Why do you greet the men in Senate and give them honorable titles as honorables? Why do you greet the men in House of Assembly and call them honorables? Why do you call them chief, those who sit in Senate as the chief's counsel, when they conspire and collude with the state to mutilate the constitution of the people and take away all our rights? What sort of a nation where the president appoints every commission member, where the president appoints the judiciary every judge, where the president appoints every board member of a state-owned enterprise? Comrades and friends, I want you to think about this. That Morgan Tsvangirai, Gibson Sibanda, and Gertrude Mtombe and others, they fought and demanded and eventually got a progressive constitution, which we are now allowing to pass. I've been open that the ZCTU regards members of parliament, members of Senate, who have colluded with ZANU-PF to amend the constitution before it is even felt by the citizens. They are called a special name. They are called sellouts. It doesn't mean he was a former comrade. It doesn't mean he even worked here in ZCTU. We never taught you, comrade, those things. We taught you clear ideologies. You are now a sellout and we call you as such. It was through their fights that workers got a progressive labor act that promoted and guaranteed a lot of workers' rights. Sadly, this act is now being mutilated as well. Their resilience, consciousness and courage must educate us, but above all it must inspire us. Who doesn't want to leave a legacy that Morgan Tsvangirai left, for fighting for the downtrodden, fighting for freedom, fighting for justice? I still remember his photo when he was brutalized at Machipisa there in Matapi. I still remember many of his legacies and photos when he was coming out of prison. He was fighting for these things that we are allowing to happen in our own eyes. So comrades, let our heroes and heroines inspire us. The second issue, Comrade SG and fellow comrades, we took a wrong turn in November 2017 when we supported the military coup, hoping that there will be progress. We actually jumped from the frying pan right into the fire, and we have no one else to rescue us than ourselves. One thing that we must be clear is that yes, development has its own contradictions, and every revolution has its contradictions. This is one of the greatest contradictions of our struggle. That at some point, depending on many reasons, everyone has got a reason. We supported the military coup, hoping that the devil may repent and come and give us mercy. But here we are in trouble. Today we are under a de facto military rule. All our constitutional rights and freedoms have been suspended. We are worse than animals. Animals have got better rights in some cases. I've never seen many animals that have been arrested in this country. I've not seen anyone. I've not seen many animals that have been poisoned. There are quite a few. But human beings are being arrested, brutalized, and killed for having a different political view, for holding a different political idea, for believing in the cause of trade unionist and workers' cause. People are dying for that. So, we no longer enjoy the fundamental rights such as freedoms of assembly. Pano gonotosikwa poto nzimanyanya. Nganzo kusitoda mavarirwa. Panotambwa game rekuti vanhu vasaungana vashande vasvika pakavharwa. Freedom of assembly is now no longer enjoyed in this country. Ipo pano kungobuda kuti ngatifambe takanyarara kusvika kumarket square kana kuna Fort. Vanenge vatouya nemvura dzinovava nemboma dzekuruva vanhu vari kuzvifambira. We no longer enjoy freedom of speech or freedom of expression. You have seen journalists being arrested. Vana vokuno chimwe vari kugara kumakoti nekumajeri. Nenyaya yekungotaura chete kuti iwo uri kubaregera kuba drugs. Nyaya yekungotaura chete kuti drugs ine mai, ine hama, ana amai nevana vemutungamiri wenyika zviri kuendesa vanhu kumatorongo. Kutaura chokwadi kwakusungisa munyika ino yeZimbabwe. We no longer enjoy freedom of association. As they drive towards the one-party state agenda, they are infiltrating every organization, and trade unions are not spared. We spend much of our time arguing. We spend most of our times arguing instead of planning for workers and fighting for workers, because we are now having them within our own structures. They are trying to decimate the opposition, but they will also try to decimate the labor movement, and they are trying. I must point out that the greatest responsibility that we have at the moment is to ensure that we are not captured by the ruling elite. We are going for 9th elective Congress. ZANU-PF is not sleeping, organizing, mobilizing, trying to influence the outcome of a ZCTU conference. In Herald, they tell you that at Sinabasa, behind the scene, their political commissars and many other people are playing around to try and capture the labor movement. Morgan Tsvangirai rejected that. Wellington Chibebe rejected that. Are we the generation that is going to hand over the only independent workers' movement to oppressors, to exploiters? We no longer have the right to be free from torture and degrading treatment, or the right to liberty and security of persons. People are being abducted right in their homes. What the colonizers used to do through their security systems, they said liberators in the so-called second dispensation are doing the same. All our socio-economic rights are violated daily. We no longer lead dignified lives as we are deprived of our socio-economic rights. The right to education is gone, access to health is gone, adequate housing is gone, fair wages and many others all have been violated and they are gone. Who amongst us is earning a fair wage? The poverty datum line is now 28,362. The minimum wage is still 2,508. The poverty datum line is 28,362. The teacher is still earning 11,000. A teacher who was revered and respected in a community is now borrowing from students. Makambozinzwa kupi. Diana anga asingadi kuita chiremba. Mamusingadi kuita chiremba nokuti maida nyama yenyanya kuda kwazo kubatsira vanhu. Taida kuita chiremba nokuti ndokwa kune mari yese. chiremba izvozvo akupedza nguva chirova toitoi atitsvaka mari. Chino chandishinga. We are also living and working under a failed state. The ZCTU must be clear that Zimbabwe is now a failed state. There are some people who want to be academic for nothing. If you think this Zimbabwe is not a failed state, you are saying so from a privileged position. If you are looting and benefiting from those who are looting in this country, yes, Zimbabwe is not failed to you. But for the working class, Zimbabwe is definitely a failed state. It is a failed state that is failing to guarantee security of persons. Trade union leaders, political activists and civic society activists, students are abducted and tortured by the state militia, the state agents, its police, its secret services, military intelligence, you name it. They are now operating like militias. They are now the greatest danger against the citizens, the greatest danger against trade unionists, greatest danger against political activists, the greatest danger against young students like Ngadzore and Chirika. The law is being weaponized and used to persecute dissenting voices. The judiciary is no longer trusted by many and has been acting in many instances in a manner that cements the view that it is captured and used as a willing weapon against citizens. Many of us have been arrested, but we remember Comrade Sheila Chisirimun, the gender coordinator for Atus, who was sentenced to 16 months in prison. And guess what? She's not a Mfumira who looted over 90 million NASA funds. She's not Nguaya, who was about to loot COVID funds. She's not a Yose, who looted solar, money for solar, and put on some dilapidated structures in Wange there. You call him what? Weakness. She was arrested and the crime is simply raising a banner that we need a living wage. So if they arrested Sheila Chisirimun, there is no guess that they are going to arrest the director or Madame Fiona. They are coming for all of us. They are coming for you, Paul. So this is why Zimbabwe is a failed state. It is a failed state that is failing to provide public services. Go to Parenya, go Mumpilo, Mtare General Hospital. Go anywhere where there's a public hospital. You will see that our hospitals have become death traps. There are no medicines and medical workers are demotivated. You know that Jackson in a doctor Akatsama. Zwindi zvako ndezvei? Shinga mshandishinga. Wechingoti tiriwana msangano. Doctor wako achakurapa arwara iwewe. Haurapwi kana political commissar. Haurapwi kana chef. Ukarwara iwe uchaenda kuparire nyatwa. Ikoko ndo kuna doctor asiri kutambira anenge auya nenzara. Shinga mshandishinga. Our schools lack basic infrastructure like toilets and classrooms. Ndinoshamisika zvechinzi tisi nyika yakadzidza. Nyika yakadzidza ina vatungamiri vasingazivi kuti chinhu chinotanga kuiswa kana masvika pastand itoilet. Vana havana matoilets kumaskuru. Nyika yakafunda ine mapresident anotenga helicopter asati aisa mvura muzvikoro. 18 million. Ndakanzwa kuti deposit. President wada kushaina vari mudenga. Vachikurakidzai kuti nyika ino ine upfumi hwayo. Isite chikwekweta nekudya nhoko dzezvironda. Look at our schools, comrades. Students have no books and teachers have no accommodation. I was talking to comrades from Fozeu, the Teachers Federation. Some classes have got 120 pupils per one teacher. Some classes have got 90 pupils per one teacher. Tell me, you parents who say we don't want to deal with politics, is it not politics that allocates resources to every sector of the community, of the society? It is politics that is determining that a class should have 90 kids and one teacher. And guess what they told us? They said, as teachers, we are tired because parents, you are not raising these issues. So So what we do, we give them an assessment and an exercise. Then we see the bright ones and we move with them. Vana venyu vari kuuya kuzogara class nekudziya mushana. Mwana anenge akasara haana ari kumubatsira because of the political decisions of men and women in cabinet. Our roads are also in a pathetic condition. Potholes are littered all over, exposing motorists to accidents and damages to vehicles. Our transport system is pathetic. The public utility ZUPCO is failing to cope while exposing workers and travelers to COVID-19. Fungwa ZUPCO inimi not in the. Do you think it's for developmental processes of this country? No. ZUPCO is not there to give you security and safety in the road places. ZUPCO is a conduit for them to loot more. You read that they are buying buses at very low cost and they are selling them at inflated prices. Guess who is delivering fuel for all ZUPCO buses? If you track everyone who is supplying bus spares and everything at ZUPCO, it will come back to the same few people who are looting and living luxurious lives at our expense. So we are forced to squeeze in ZUPCO. We are forced to spend hours waiting for the few ZUPCO buses so that some people may build mansions in Dubai and in Senton. Zimbabwe is definitely a failed state, and we want to challenge anyone who thinks it is not, and we challenge them by giving the statistics. It's a state that is facing economic and social implosion. Look at this statistic that came from the Zimbabwe report. 83% of all of us, people in urban areas, who were once living affluent lifestyles, they are failing to buy bread. It's not that you are failing to buy a Nissan Sun from Japan. It is no longer that we are failing to buy a nice suit from Babas or Topman or Greater Men's, which was the measurement of being poor back then. You are failing to buy bread. We are failing to buy meat. We are failing to buy million cooking oil. And this is documented in reputable surveys. 70% of people in here, the whole country, they are in poverty. Almost 3/4 of people are in poverty in this country. But you hear people saying, we are doing well, there is stability. And 40% of them, they are in extreme poverty, failing to access a 2,100 kilos of nutrition. This is the mark of a failed state. The minimum wage is still 2,500, I've pointed it out. It is no longer a secret that wages and salaries and pensions payouts are barely enough. The food poverty line only, when we were negotiating a TNF, it was at 20,000, and I'm sure it has gone up. The majority of teachers, nurses, clerks in banks, people in manufacturing and people in the mines, they are failing to earn sufficient to buy food only. Is that not a failed state? Our doctors, nurses, teachers, and all other workers are incapacitated. But the situation is more dire for farm workers and domestic workers whose earnings cannot buy a loaf of bread a day for a month. So we now have people, munyika yakasununguka, 41 years after independence, with the president and vice presidents, ministers and deputy ministers, permanent secretaries and senators and MPs, a country that uses over $20 million to buy cars, Zemashef. We now have people who cannot buy a loaf of bread for 30 days. The situation has been compounded by COVID-19. But comrades, a lot needs to be done by ourselves to alleviate the plight of workers. The causes of our precarious situation and the causes of the failed state are well known by all of us. These are neoliberalism. Our rules started in 1990 and 1991 when the ZCTU said we must not jump into the ESAP, Economic Structural Adjustment Program. And they have been exacerbated by Mtuli Ngube. Your misery and your problems are emanating from Mtulinue's office. They are a result of Mtulinue's policies. They are a result of Mtulinue's policy of austerity. It is Mtulinue who came from Switzerland and saw you happy, enjoying your life, earning US dollars. He saw a teacher earning 520 and he decided with his colleagues to disrupt your happiness. Amwero taitonzo happy people until ana chinotimba wakatomboenda achitogona akidza vaende ku Dubai. Kechin Zimbabwe is a happy people. Mutuli came and disrupted all those things. And you say we mustn't focus on politics. Don't want to say this, but if there is any worker, any trade unionist for that matter, who believes that junk, then you are illiterate, a political illiterate. Because these are well-known comrades. One of them is endemic corruption. It is corruption. When they are not giving you, they are not saving anything. When they are not giving you salaries, they are looting everything and stashing it in safe havens. It is poor governance. It is state capture by cartels and monopolies. It is dictatorship. We all love our monopolies. We love our econet. We all love our monopolies. We love our old mutual. How much are they paying workers? How much are they getting from you just to check a balance they charge? Because you don't go greeter greeter so standing. Maspera say, Ukasa total msandi charge please ndandru ngoita orudo nemi. Uno charge wa greeter mu. Kufona ka phone kaya ka auto greeter mu. Uno charge. So we need also to fight against greed from those in power, but also against greed from these corporates that we have, the INSCOs of this world, the old mutuals of this world, the Econet of this world, the Stanbic of this world, Standard Chartered Bank of this world, all are conniving to pay useless salaries to workers whilst they make profits. I'm told one bank has made $1 billion. In COVID, have made $1 billion profits after paying everything. But pensioners are earning $5 US. It's not even enough to come to collect it. It is a one-party state agenda. It is kleptocracy. It's conflation of ruling parties and state. It is patronage. It is illicit financial outflows. We are losing 100 million through gold alone. It's not taxing kuti ndiana anocontrola gold. Takatoudzwa uno munhu anonzi mafiosi. Aitaura kuti kuna vice president vaamukorokosa. That's where we are losing money from illicit financial outflows. As you can see, comrades, all these are man-made and deliberately formulated to benefit a few at the expense of the majority working class. It is therefore clear that this cannot be resolved through adherence to the rules and systems put in place by the ruling elites and their cronies. We hear what are saying, why are you not going to court? Don't you know that the Zua judgment came from the court? We hear some workers telling us, why are you not going to TNF? Don't you know that we have been in TNF for time immemorial? We hear what are saying, why can't you approach parliament? Haven't you seen members of parliament voting for amendment of your bill or for your constitution? We hear people saying, why have you not been approaching the police? Don't you know that the police is being used to haunt us and to brutalize us? So workers cannot get a reprieve from a judiciary that shares the same ideology of the ruling class as witnessed from the various judgments, and more particularly the Zua judgment. Equally, the same workers cannot get and rely on parliament, which has lost credibility after the politically motivated recalls of elected members of parliament and the evident whipping system that has resulted all men in are they joined together? 210 people went a decision one to amend the constitution. They were 191 or 97. They all agreed. They didn't agree there's whipping system. So going to parliament is a wastage of time. Workers cannot, and sadly, cannot rely on the tripartite negotiating forum. The tripartite negotiating forum is dysfunctional due to lack of political will by government that is keen to benefit businesses at the expense of the working class. The government is prepared to use the police and the military force to enforce its open for business ideology. Vanamkoma vedu vakapfeka boots neuniform vachikutorwirawo kuti dai zvaitawo zvakanaka naivo vagarawo zvakanaka kuchikurubhi kusapoti. Tikangoti akuda mari ndo vanoshandiswa, tikati mabhazi ezvipondo awande ndo vanoshandiswa, asi tarisai every 5 o'clock kusirisa kunoita mupurisa wemuzimbabwe munomu ari kumisa lift. Ini everyday ndo akwidza ndikangana ndine space ndechida kutaura nawo kuti meme chitiroverei havana mhinduro. They are being used and the government is prepared to kill. They killed right outside our offices there on 1 August 2018. They are prepared to kill and use the police and the military to enforce a reactionary ideology that was never had anyway, that was never taught anywhere at any camp during the war. Zimbabwe is open for business. In any case, the government officials and their cronies in cartels and monopolies are the business owners, and they are now acting for their own benefits. You might have heard that labor walked out of the recent TNF after government connived with employers. There's nothing in TNF. They want just to have TNF meetings just for checklist, just for donors, for ILO, for UNDP, for EU, that the so-called Second Republic or Second Dispensation is listening to people. All goods and services except wages and salaries are now paid in US dollars. Why should workers carry the burden of everyone? Someone is going to the Reserve Bank and get US dollars as 1:84. They go out and sell it at 1:130, 1:120. But someone is paying, it's you and me, because they are getting 40% without any gain, without any production. So you who is producing is paying for them. Your mother, my sister, my grandmother, who is buying inputs in US dollar of tomatoes, inputs of tobacco, inputs of maize, but forced to sell in Zim dollar, is paying for the opulence and good lives that people are living. Government and employers have also failed to provide adequate safety nets for citizens and workers. There are no PPEs. There's nothing tangible that has been done. Slave wages and wage theft have become an existing threat for workers, and our priority is to restore wage value by any means. COVID has exposed governments and employers' ineptitude in providing social protection to the vulnerable. The COVID scandal that has led to persecution of journalists has also exposed that our problems are mainly a result of corruption and impunity. Pensioners and the disadvantaged are at the receiving end of the economic crisis. And I know pensioners QSB, Agribank. Ask them how much they are getting, 1,000. Ask them how much they've used for transport. They use $10. So they come and go back with a debt. The 1,000 cannot pay them anything. So comrades, in conclusion, we need to change the rules of the game. Like our predecessors that I've spoken about, it's time workers assert their power. The only solution is not rushing to the judiciary, as I've said. The only solution is a united front that is led by workers that must continue to wage a struggle against both repression and neoliberalism, leading to restoration of the constitutional democracy. We have got two priorities in our struggle. The first one is to fight neoliberalism. There are many people in Zimbabwe who are saying they are in struggle. There are many people in opposition who believe that they are in struggle. The message that we have for them, if your struggle does not include working class issues and agenda, if your struggle is not against neoliberalism, then you hold false consciousness. You are just doing it for fun, and soon you will be beaten by the regime, you will be arrested, you will be brutalized by the regime, but for no benefit. Anyone who is going to be in this struggle in this country must know that on top of the agenda is to fight that which you fought against during the colonial rule. We are going to fight against neoliberalism. The second point on our agenda is to fight against repression. We need to fight against repression. It must be clear to all that without democracy and constitutional freedoms, there is no prosperity and dignity for workers and citizens. The United Front must resist and fight against neoliberal policies and the ideologies of the ruling class and their cronies. The Thatcherism that is dominating our labor market is bad for all of us and must be resisted. The working class, including formal and informally employed workers, self-employed workers, and peasants and students whose toil is funding luxurious lifestyles of the ruling elites and their cronies, must unite and peacefully resist. If you get someone from outside the country, blindfold them as they get to Robert Mugabe International Airport, take them to Chishawasha, take them to Borodeo, Semlevi, take them to the good places, open their eyes and let them see the beauty of this country. Blindfold them again and get them to Epworth, get them to Mavuku, Tafara, Budiriro. Open their eyes, they will think you have taken them to a different country. We are now a divided nation. We cannot win on our own comrades or in our own sectors. We recognize the courageous and militant battles of the doctors, nurses, and teachers, and that must be applauded. However, we must draw critical and crucial lessons that against a military dictatorship, no sector, no community, or socio-political group will win on its own. We therefore need the students, we need communities, civic society activists, we need churches, we need political players, we need the peasants, and even we need to convince some of us, some of the poor people who are being used against us but without gain by the oppressors. They must all join the workers in the struggle for freedom, in the struggle for justice, in the struggle for restoration of our dignity, and in the struggle for equality and fairness. This is why in our political policy conference in Kadoma, the ZCTU resolved that we need a second National Working People's Convention. We must urgently convene this convention to clarify the agenda and the ideology that must drive our struggle. We are not going to be used again. We must push for the working class ideology, and this we say without apologizing to anyone. But we are willing to listen and to engage all. The convention must agree on the strategies, and everything about the collective struggle must be discussed frankly, openly, and it must be agreed by consensus. It is only the collective power of a united active citizenry, used peacefully, consistently and persistently, that will stand and win against the military power of government. We must clearly express that our call is for a non-violent civil resistance by the people. We must never entertain any suggestion of violence. This will be counter-progressive and will only benefit the brutal state that enjoys monopoly on violence. They are setting up for failure. Our resistance is going to be collective. Our resistance is going to be persistent. Our resistance must be consistent. But above everything else, it must be non-violent. We can't match against the military with its armor, but we can match anyone with our voice, with our truth, with our determination and inspiration and hope that is exercised through non-violent civil resistance. Workers of Zimbabwe, we need to address the underlying causes of slave wages as a united front. You can't scratch the surface by trying to negotiate at NECs or TNF. It won't work. This we need to do with agents. No one is paid to the citizens of Zimbabwe. No one is paid, and none but ourselves will liberate us. So these are our demands for this May Day to the government and employers. We are demanding that there must be an end to neoliberalism, especially the evil austerity measures that has been put in place by Mutuli Mue. We don't want your experiment, your economic experiment. We don't want you to then go out and write books and articles based on your experiment on us. Each time you talk about statistics, each time you talk about stability of the exchange rate, each time you talk about the reduction of the inflation figures, you are ignoring people who are dying giving birth. You are ignoring child mortality rates because of your policies. You are ignoring the girls that are getting early pregnancies because their parents are not able to pay for their school fees and they've dropped out. You are ignoring many citizens that are dying at the doors of your defunct hospitals. You are ignoring the many people that are sleeping hungry, that do not have any food. So we don't eat your statistics. There is fake stability that is being helped by the suffering of the poor workers. The second demand is the restoration of US dollar salaries to August 2018 figures. Workers of Zimbabwe, let us differ on anything else. Let us differ on your political affiliation and political ideas, but we must not differ in terms of US dollar salaries demands. I'm here to announce to the working class and to the citizens that the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, the Zimbabwe Federations of Trade Unions, the Apex Council are united in this cause. And this is why we all walked out from a useless TNF 2 weeks ago. We are demanding that the minimum wage be raised to the poverty datum line. There mustn't be any person who is earning an amount that is below the poverty datum line. The government and employers must not deliberately create poor people who are working 30 days, who are working 22 days a month. We need worker protection from COVID-19 through the implementation of robust mechanisms, particularly the risky sectors, especially service sectors where there is direct human contact. That government prioritizes safety nets for the vulnerable like pensioners, retrenched workers, orphans, old age, and child-headed households. This government is irresponsible. Vana nherera vasikubatsirwa, vakwegura vakavaka nyika ino havasi kubatsirwa, varetrenched vari kutotorerwa tax almost 30%. Kune munhu akapuwa 4 million yako kuti amamillionaire ndizvo tadzorwa kumillionaire, useless millionaires. Ndokutorerwa 1 million as tax per retrenchment. What sort of an irresponsible government is that? We want the government to avail enough and safe COVID-19 vaccines to all citizens, free of cost. We need tax relief measures for workers for them to retain their disposable incomes. It's not just for workers. Workers must earn so that we demand increases and we buy goods from the service providers, from businesses. Workers must earn so that we pay or we subscribe to pensions so that entrepreneurs get cheap and long-term financing of their businesses. Workers must earn sufficient so that we pay taxes and that we have our infrastructure improved. We are demanding end to repression and brutality against workers, trade unionists and citizens. All political prisoners must be freed. Makomborero Arisueshe, Joanna Mamombe, Cecilia Chimbiri, Wongai Tome, many of them that are in prison and they are political prisoners, they are prisoners of conscience, they must be freed. We have an emphatic message to the two team leaders, political leaders, President Mnangagwa and the MGCT President Douglas Monzora, that they must stop amending the Constitution, but instead align labor laws to the Constitution. We need the Public Services Act to be aligned so that the public sector workers get the right to negotiate and to bargain, and they get the right to freedom of association to belong to unions. The government must stop corruption, cartels and monopolies. We must stop state capture, illicit financial outflows and plunder of our natural resources by neo-imperialists. Nguwa yakapedzwa na minister wemapurisa vanonzani Kazembe achaenda kunotsvaka munhu ari korokoza passport office, akaenda kunomira kune vanhu vari kubudisa gold paairport 6 kgs todai nyika ino yakabudirira. Akaenda kunotsvaka vanhu vari kutora gold, vari kumora diamond kuchiadzwa. Minister, comrade minister, you have a better task and role to do. Your task is not to run around mishikashika, because you know, they are putting a lot of resources kumanisa mishikashika iri kubatsira vanhu transport and not fighting illicit financial outflows. We are seeking ratification of ILO Convention 190 of 2019 on the elimination of violence and harassment in the world of work. We have seen increased gender-based violence during the lockdowns. We have seen increased mental health cases and concomitant gender-based or violence at the workplace because of the economic crisis. We need this to be ratified. Members of Parliament and Senate, Chief Council, Council of Chiefs, there is a convention code 190 of 2019. Instead of amending the Constitution, you must be ratifying and pushing for its ratification. We are seeking ratification of ILO Convention 187 2006 on promotional framework for occupational safety and health. We've seen how COVID-19 that we have put in place. We think this victory on these demands is possible if we only unite, if we are only united and resolute. It was done by the Haymarket cadres who achieved the 8-hour working day through their blood, which is the foundation of this May Day commemoration. Let me conclude by paying tribute to those on the front lines during this pandemic. We are not sure of when the pandemic ends, and it is vital that they be provided with a safe vaccine and adequate PPE. To the citizens, let us adhere to COVID-19 protocols and save lives. To the workers, my prayer is that we find each other and fight for our class interests and emancipate ourselves from the jaws of the brute capitalism. Nothing must divide us. The year 2020 is uncertain, but our demands and needs are certain. So let us not tire until we achieve. Those who have not registered to vote, the ZCT is going to fight in the political space. Go and register to vote. Let's take our kids, let's take our nieces, our nephews, let's take our elders, our brothers and sisters, and register to vote. We are going to fight for political freedom. We are going to fight for economic justice. We are going to fight for social justice. Shinga mshandi shinga. Penga mshandi penga.